Joining us right now, Dan Steinberg, he's sports reporter for the Washington Post. By the way, follow him on Twitter at DC Sports Blog. Dan Steinberg, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Dan.
No problem. It's actually Bog, no L in the last part of that.
Oh, excuse me, DC Sports Bog. I thought it was a typo. Oh, so you're there in the swamp of DC Sports.
Exactly.
Got it. And let's talk about that. I mean, listen, we've seen so much pressure on Dan Snyder and the team over the name the Washington Redskins. With this latest development yesterday, do your sources tell you over there at Team Redskin that they're going to be buckling under at any point soon? Because he once said he would never change the name.
You know, I haven't talked to anyone from the Redskins, but no, I think that their public statements pretty much make it clear that this does not change anything for them. That this was not entirely unexpected, that they actually had one dissenting judge out of the three on the panel, and that they feel confident that they will win this through the appeals that will take years and years, and that nothing will change in the meantime.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have some reason to feel confident because they've been through this before, have they not?
Yeah, and it's kind of a complicated thing because the last time that they went through this, it wound up getting thrown out on a technicality that probably doesn't exist anymore based on the ages and filing status of the plaintiff.
Yeah, it wasn't on the merits.
But even on the merit, the previous court indicated that they still would have won. It just so happened that they already won on the technicality, so it didn't need to go to the merit parts. But they feel confident that they still have a way to win this. And I think they would argue, and others have argued, that even if they don't, they still have common law, and they still have protection at the state level, and that this would wind up costing them virtually nothing.
Well, I mean, from a sports perspective, you know, the Redskins, they put some pads on yesterday. They're trying to have their summer workouts. I saw Joe Theismann, former Redskins great, he took to Twitter and stood by the name. Is this going to be a distraction for the current players?
You know, in general, I think distraction talk for NFL teams and for all sports teams is kind of overrated because the meaning of a distraction is really talking to a reporter for 30 seconds once during a week, you know, that when they spend hours and hours in film rooms and practicing. I don't think that it usually matters much, but I do think players are getting a little bit sick of being asked about this. You know, Santana Moss has sort of indicated that there's a little bit of fatigue, I guess, from just hearing about this so much, and they don't want to be caught in the middle of any kind of racial politics, I don't think. So I'm sure they would prefer not to be asked about this, but I can't imagine that it will impact their actual play in any way.
All right, so, you know, we had Harry Reid come out yesterday in the United States Senate and saying that, you know, this is disparaging, they ought to change the name. Eleanor Holmes Norton has said things. There are a lot of people in this town who feel the name should be changed. Even on MSNBC yesterday, listen to this.
The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office announced today that it's canceling the trademark registration of Washington, D.C.'s professional football team. Team owner Daniel Snyder maintains that the name of the team, a racial slur I won't say here, is meant to be respectful of Native American heritage and football tradition.
So you get the sense there. I mean, they won't even say the word. So what is going to be the official policy over at the Washington Post? Are you going to continue to call the team the Redskins, or are you going to call them the Washington football team?
Well, I certainly don't speak for the Washington Post, but
but you get the memos, right?
Yeah, there's no indication at all that we are doing anything to change the name. Actually, the Seattle Times did announce yesterday that they're not going to use the word at all anymore, and they joined a whole bunch of papers that have recently done similar things. The San Francisco Chronicle, the Orange County Register, the Portland Oregonian, Kansas City Star, a whole bunch of papers do not use it, but I mean, to me, that's sort of setting an editorial policy that sides with one side or the other on this.
Hold on, the Kansas City Star, the paper of record for the Kansas City Chiefs, they don't use the term Redskins? Well, and that's my point. I mean, listen, you sort of have a good outlook on the sports world, and it seems to me that if the Redskins do end up moving in this direction, and if they're the first pro team to actually change their name due to sensitivities, doesn't that open the gates for the Cleveland Indians, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Atlanta Braves? I mean, I can go on and on.
I think it does. Yeah, I think a lot of Native Americans and others who are protesting these names would like it to go in that direction. I think that, you know, Native American images and names should not be used. I think the difference, probably, the big difference is the dictionary part of it, which, whether you agree with it or not, many dictionaries describe Redskins as a slur in the way that they wouldn't the Indians or the Chiefs or the Braves. But I think that you're absolutely right that this debate doesn't go away even if the Redskins do change their name. This is years and years and years of other teams and other issues.
Right. I mean, we take calls on this, and we see interviews with Native Americans call in here, and they rarely point to a dictionary definition. It all has to do with how the word makes them feel. And therefore, if the word Braves makes people feel a certain way, then that's the precedent that's being set. For that matter, as an O'Connor, I don't like the term Fighting Irish.
Which is fine, and people. I don't care about this issue one way or the other. I mean, I don't have a stance. If people do want Fighting Irish gone, and that's what I would say to people, if they want it gone, do the same thing that these Native Americans have done, and protest it for 42 years. And if you make headway and you get people to join your campaign, then maybe it would work. I don't. If you want to do that, I guess you could just campaign for it.
Yeah. Dan Steinberg, real fast, because you write about this over at the Washington Post, you made note that Howard Stern, this has crossed into pop culture. Howard Stern made comments about this. Terry Bradshaw was on Fox News yesterday. He made comments about it, saying, just change the name. Do you feel like that there's momentum there outside of even just the sports world about this?
I mean, my impression is there's a tremendous amount of media momentum, and that it doesn't really translate over to ordinary people. Is my impression that when you look at national polls on the topic, overwhelmingly Americans, both nationally and locally, would want to keep the name. But for whatever reason, it seems to have really caught fire with sort of celebrities and media members who seem almost universally to think the name should be changed. So I don't really know why there's that disconnect between TV people and celebrity type people and media hosts and kind of ordinary NFL fans or Americans. But there definitely is a disconnect.
We have a hunch. Why there's a disconnect?
And
but people like Terry Bradshaw and Howard Stern aren't thought of as raging liberals. So I think there's something weird going on.
Well, no. What happens? And I will tell you, Dan, and you may not know this because you're in the newspaper world, but there are nonprofit organizations that are well funded who watch the media, and as soon as you take a politically incorrect stance on something,
from their opinion, you
are demonized. Advertisers are said to boycott. I don't know what Terry Bradshaw feels in his heart, but when he started to answer the question, he says, "Oh, well, this is a real sensitive issue." He has a media career, and he's afraid that he's going to get lambasted by one of these groups like Media Matters or what have you.
I mean, yeah, obviously you guys are coming from a certain place on that, and maybe that's true, but it just seems like over the last 2 years, people who previously did not express an opinion all of a sudden have an opinion about it. Just the momentum over the last 2 years is something that we haven't seen over the 40-plus years that this has been in the fight.
All right, so just in 10, 15 seconds, that's all we got left. How's the team looking this year?
Every NFL team is going to win the Super Bowl in June. Who knows? So much of it comes down to how Robert Griffin III plays, and if he can play the way he did as a rookie and not the way he did last year, and if the defense can play the way they did in his rookie year and not the way it did last year. But with new coaches and new scheme, it's impossible to say anything in June.
All right, but the Buffalo Bills are not going to win the Super Bowl, even in June. Come on, Dan Steiner.
I think the Bills and the Browns probably do.
There you go. All right.
Listen, Dan, thank you.